we are back for another episode of Weightlifting Academy, the only show dedicated to putting 10,000 new lifters on the platform in 2012, and today I'm wearing a Megatron shirt.
Nice.
So if you don't know anything about the Transformers, well, you're a bad person. Maybe you are a Decepticon like Megatron. I don't even wear red most of the time because it's not my color, but I had to get the shirt.
Make an exception for Megatron.
I make an exception for a guy who could turn into a gun.
Yeah.
Which, you know, it's kind of, I live in a very liberal place, so why I'm that why I'm that excited about a robot that can transform into a gun, I don't know, but I am. You know, I'm the one coming on here with all these ridiculous shirts. You, my friend, are much more conservative in the shirt department.
Part of it's just I think we record these podcasts during the middle of my teaching day, so
That's true.
I try to dress the part, a little bit more, I guess, conservative. And if you've ever wondered what professors do during their office hours, they could be recording podcasts.
They could be podcasting.
Yeah.
They absolutely could. So you don't want to be the Professor Hartman known for his Transformer and comic book shirts.
Nah, not at this point, but maybe in the future. Maybe if I could find a Megatron shirt, maybe that'd be a different story. But
That would be it.
we'll see.
Maybe if you were in the computer science or the math department.
Yeah.
I did have a math professor who would wear a full-on Spider-Man outfit with the mask.
Yeah.
And he went to go watch one of the Spider-Man movies that way. And, of course, when he walked into the room, into the theater, the entire crowd goes wild.
Yeah.
Whoa! But he was so embarrassed that he actually kept the mask on the entire movie. So that was interesting. He's not too embarrassed to wear it, but he was too embarrassed to take the mask off.
Yeah.
That's pretty interesting. He also ran a marathon in that thing, so I don't know if I'd ever want to wear it again if I wore a marathon in a Spider-Man outfit.
That's before the Warrior Dash and those other things where that's encouraged. So he's probably stood out.
Yeah, I'm sure he did.
He need a spot. Hey, you mentioned Spider-Man, and I just thought of this. I read a decent little article yesterday. It wasn't a great article, but it's an interesting concept. It was in the Journal of Pediatric Obesity, and it's a whole scientific journal dedicated to the issues dealing with kids and being overweight. And some of it's there's a lot. Mostly it's physiology, but every now and then they have like some social, cultural type stuff. And the title of the article is "What Would Batman Eat?" And it was a pretty name for a scientific research journal article.
Yeah, that's great.
The gist of it is they got kids together and they interviewed them, and they basically gave them they showed them a picture of apples or a picture of French fries, and they asked them the question, what would Batman eat? And with the idea that Batman is somebody to look up to as a superhero, and he's fit and strong and healthy, and I forget the actual number, but maybe it was like 60%. And 60% of the kids identified, that Batman would be better off eating apples than French fries. So there's hope for it. And for any other parents out there, maybe if you want your kids to make healthy food choices, you pose the question, what would Batman eat, or Spider-Man, or Superman, or somebody else? And that might be off to a good start. Not exactly weightlifting, but in that sphere.
That's I have often thought that sometimes comic books and things like that, like maybe cartoons even, but comic books particularly, get a bit of a bad rap in educational circles.
Yeah.
Like I've known some English teachers, for instance, who they get down on their, maybe they're teaching sixth graders, right?
Sure.
Who get down on their students for picking comic books as the thing to read.
Yep.
And then there's been some pedagogical research actually that says actually that's a good gateway to being a big reader, that kids who read comic books are far more likely to read real serious books as time goes on than kids who don't. And it's just, of course, like anything else, it's like practice. And speaking about the obesity thing, I actually kind of thought that one cool thing about weightlifting is that unlike cardio-based things, for a kid that's really overweight,
Yeah.
Sometimes lifting weights is a much easier introduction to exercise
I agree.
than anything that's cardio based. Cardio is really hard on someone who's overweight.
Yeah.
And it feels hard, and it just feels really miserable. The heavier you are, the more miserable it feels. Whereas just lifting some weights,
Yeah.
even if all you did was you just taught a kid how to front squat.
And truthfully, they will probably be more successful early on as a weightlifter. And competition would be great, but they will experience results faster lifting weights because they're
Right.
already big kids, so they can probably outlift kids of similar ages, maybe.
Right.
But
There's a real vote of confidence there that happens.
yeah, exactly. It's a good confidence builder that hey, I can do this, I can do it well, and I can lift more than some of these other kids. And
Yeah.
then the long-term positive changes will come after that. After that initial, hey, I'm good at this, or I can be good at this. That's when real progress starts.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. I mean, I think that it would be an interesting thing to see schools implementing some kind of weightlifting program, not necessarily Olympic weightlifting program, but just lifting weights in general as the baseline
Yep.
for their physical education, rather than what I think is kind of a hodgepodgey, weird PE
Yeah.
program. Like there's not really a lot happening in a lot of PE programs. Like
Yeah.
if you go at all, I mean, a lot of them don't even have schools anymore. Don't have physical education. But if you do have a physical education program, more often than not, it's just you play some games or you kind of screw off a little bit. Maybe you do some stretching and then you leave.
Yep.
And that's rather worthless. There's no system there. You would never teach another class that way.
Yeah. Yeah. You wouldn't just put a bunch of math problems on the board and say, we're gonna work on
Yeah,
some math. Like you
totally. And
have
here's a
you have
Rubik's
lecture, you
cube
have
if you want to play with a
it's
Rubik's cube. And
yeah, just
you
figure
know.
it out. Yeah, you're exactly right. It's a progression, and what better way do you see that progression than adding pounds to the bar or repetitions per set? Like it's a yeah.
Right.
We should get in charge of the board of education and make some serious changes.
Yeah, maybe that's it. I mean, I do think there's something to the idea. I strongly believe that of the programs in a school that just should never be cut,
Yep,
physical education is obviously one of the big ones, along with math and
science.
science and all of that stuff. And I would even argue that music and art are the same way. You can't really cut them and expect your culture to have a bunch of really smart, creative people who are going to do great things.
Yeah,
If you cut out two of the things that make people that way, one
yeah,
is having a healthy body that helps promote a healthy mind,
yep,
they're connected, and the other being, the kinds of things that keep your creative thinking going. And it is really a sad state that physical education is something that's being just axed all the way across the board in the country. And the argument being, well, we just don't have money, blah, 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 blah. My feeling is, certain kinds of things are not that hard. Weightlifting is one of them where you can have some cheap bars and a room with some mats on the floor.
basically, yeah.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, the money thing's always funny. It's yeah, from a purely money standpoint, weightlifting is probably one of the cheaper things you can possibly do. Maybe it comes down to more like instruction, and there are people who are afraid to actually teach the lifts or coach the lifts, and it's a lot easier just to roll out a ball or get some, tell everybody to go out for a run.
Yeah.
Where if you're working in, snatch and clean and jerk are highly technical, but even teaching, adolescents how to squat and pull effectively would require a lot of teaching, and I think maybe
Right.
people are afraid of that. So.
Yeah. That is interesting. I wonder if maybe, in the long run, it would be interesting to see if there was a push for long enough in the country to accept that, hey, we realize now for scientific reasons kids need to exercise, that we don't just want them to not be obese, but even getting past the obesity issue, we want to make sure that we're giving kids the best education they can have, and part of that education is making sure that their physical body and
Yeah,
their mind are as healthy as they can be.
yeah,
That if that's the case, that maybe um, the what it means to teach someone how to be a physical education teacher would change dramatically. We say, well, we're
yeah.
going to teach these people the same way we would teach, say, somebody who's going to be a math teacher.
Sure.
That
So
there's
I would hope so. And you made a real good point there about the connection, healthy mind, healthy body. And there's actually tons of research. I was a part of a very small study in Florida a couple years ago. Kids that were more active outside of school had better test scores inside of school, as one of the ways of basically trying to hang on to PE in elementary schools, basically showing, like, look, on standardized test scores, the kids that are more active do better on on different assignments.
Right.
There's lots of, just, when you exercise, you have, increased, blood flow and oxygen delivery out to working muscles, but that blood and oxygen also goes to your brain, which stimulates different areas of learning and memory and retention. And there's just tons and tons of positive benefits from a strictly educational standpoint.
Yeah.
To keep activity in the school day. So hopefully, I think there are some good people in place, and I think some big changes are coming, but it might just be a matter of when, not how quickly can some of these changes. But the research is there to support it, so hopefully it's
yeah. And I think probably culturally, if you just walk down the street and you ask somebody, you said, do you think somebody's going to do better on test scores if they exercise regularly or didn't exercise? I think people would automatically say, well, of course, if they exercise more, that's good.
Yeah.
So there's probably already enough cultural understanding as it is. I think that's one of the cool things. I don't know where I've said this. Maybe I said it here. Probably said it all over the place. But I think there has been a large shift in culture as a rule anyway when it comes to fitness stuff.
Sure.
Where it's no longer a mystery.
Yep.
Some of the basics, like most people understand you need to do some weightlifting in order to be healthy. They get that. Most people understand roughly the basics of diet. Like, it's not like a shock if you tell them that, eating pie all day is going to be bad for you. Like, this is this is not going to blow their mind. Most people even realize that you probably need a higher protein intake than not. That having a certain amount of protein in your diet is important for, regenerating, the body. And that's cool. I think there's something really fascinating about that even though the obesity problem has gotten worse and worse and worse and worse, the cultural understanding of health and fitness has also gotten better and better and better. It's really interesting. They're kind of going in opposite directions. And that is a fascinating thing. I don't know why that's exactly it. Like, maybe it's just there's a lag time or something.
It's the same way about, like, how much time and energy is spent to, teaching different, material in the schools. Like, we know for tens of years that our science and math is lacking internationally. So there's been a big focus to improve the subjects of science and math, yet we keep going down as well.
Yeah.
Deep thoughts here on Weightlifting Academy.
That's right. That's what people come here for. You come to hear a couple of weightlifting coaches talk philosophy.
Yeah.
It's like car talk. I don't even own a car. I live in Portland, where you don't really need a car.
I wish I lived in a city where that was possible.
And I will sometimes listen to car talk, even though I don't even own a car, because it is kind of fun to listen to people blab on about who in the world knows. We're talking about this.
You walk most places?
I walk. The bus system's really, really good. Like, in some cities, you could use the bus, but it's a little dangerous.
Yeah, I grew up in Baltimore, and they're trying to improve, mass transit.
Yeah.
But depending where and when, if you're riding the bus in Baltimore, you're with a whole interesting crew of people.
Yeah. I mean, some cities, you just don't really want to be on the bus or on kind of mass transit. And you certainly don't want to be on some of the trams or the trains or whatever. Some of those in some cities they are flat out dangerous.
Yep.
That is not true in Portland. The bus system is really good. Buses coming usually every 15 minutes. It can take you all over the place.
Nice.
There's even an app for your iPhone that, like, you can just click a button and it automatically figure out where you are, where the closest buses are, when they're going to come, and all of that. Really, really cool. And because I live, like, in the city, that means that, I have easy access to getting anywhere I want to go. But I do a lot of walking, actually, which is something that I guess is fairly normal for people who live in a city. Like, I will walk at least about 45 minutes a day. Sometimes it gets up to an hour and a half. or so if you just accumulate, all the time in the day. And that's something interesting because, I mean, I don't like doing cardio, but I do like just walking around. And there's something nice about that, that every day I know I'm getting in just some level of sort of like the low-grade exercise.
Something to be said about physical activity.
Something
It's
about
different
it.
than exercise, but it's a necessary part of your life,
Yeah. There's something human about moving.
Yeah.
Not just sitting all day. Even though, of course, I spend a lot of my day sitting, as I am right now. But, we're talking about this mind-body stuff, and I'm a big promoter of that. I'm also a big, not just for children, but I think for adults, a lot of times, we're talking about sitting, not moving. Weightlifting, I think, is yet another great addition, I think, to adults' life. It's also another good entry point for adults. I think for the same kinds of reasons that it would be for a kid, where not only is it good just for building up muscle, blah, 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 but I think just psychologically, it's sometimes easier to get somebody to do a couple of days worth of working out with weights first before you progress them into whatever else they are going to do. And I've had great success convincing adults to do Olympic-style weightlifting. Like, that has not been a hard sell for me. It was something I assumed would be a hard sell at the outset. This is the kind of thing that only young, aggressive boys are going to want to do, right? Like, from the outside, that's what it seems like it would be. Turns out that's not true at all. Getting a lot of men and women who are, late 30s, 40s, 50s, doing Olympic-style weightlifting has been actually pretty easy. The instant that they've tried it, they're like, hey, this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
And I think that there may be something to the idea that, you almost want, if you have a life where you spend a significant portion of that life sitting around, which almost all of us do, by necessity, because that's what your job requires, computer and all that, that maybe going the opposite extreme, where the times you do get to work out, you really do some cool stuff, and your body's doing some wild stuff, that may be just like a way of balancing out, in your mind, like, oh man, okay, now I feel cool now. I feel okay with the fact that my life is a lot of sitting around, because when I go to the gym, I am at the gym.
Yep.
I'm sure that has a lot to do with the popularity of CrossFit. CrossFit might not have been all that popular among our paleo ancestors. They were like, hey, man, my life is already like that. That sounds horrible.
Yeah.
But I can see how it's really appealing to somebody who spends all their day in an office.
Doing the exact opposite. Yep. Just sitting, slow, walking type things to put some high intensity exercise onto it. Really spices things up.
Yeah. And the cool thing is that if you are a Masters weightlifter, there is a Masters Nationals competition every year, which is happening this Saturday. And so I don't know if they're going to have a streaming. That would be cool. I don't think they are. But they do a pretty good job of getting all their stuff on YouTube.
Yep.
Most of the time. So hopefully within a couple of weeks afterwards, there'll be all the different competitors' lifts. And Masters Nationals every year is usually a pretty cool show. I mean, they have a lot of people show up.
Yep.
Pretty well run. And the community of Masters lifters is, a pretty positive, cool community.
Pretty awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they definitely, they're into it. And they're really happy if you're also into it, which is awesome. I've got one lifter, Dave, going. He's going to be in the 40 to 45 age group class. He's a 105 lifter, so he's kind of doing his last few workouts here before he goes this week. That should be pretty fun.
Yep.
He's bringing his daughter along. His daughter's pretty awesome. She's like maybe she's 10. I want to say she's 10.
Yep.
Maybe that's too old. But she's young, and she'll come to the local contest and just flip out every time Dave makes a lift.
Yep.
She's like, wow, yeah! She is really into weightlifting. She'll even do the thing where, Dave's about to go on. She'll go, you going to make this lift? "You better make this lift," and then she'll like smack him. She's pretty hilarious. So she's going to be going, and so I know that Dave's in good hands. I don't have to be there because she's his real coach.
Nice. You're the coach, but she's the boss.
She's the boss, yeah. So that'll be pretty awesome.
Yeah, we had a sort of similar deal. We had a meet at the gym I coach at, Black Box, in Fort Worth, Texas, not too long ago. And we have, in Fort Worth, we have Texas Christian, TCU University, big university.
Sure, yeah, yeah.
I have a guy I correspond with via email who actually trains out at Cal Strength with Donnie Schenkel, is actually his day-to-day coach. And he sent me an email and said his daughter goes to school at TCU. He was going to be in town visiting her, and on the same weekend we were having a meet, so he wanted to lift.
Oh, cool.
This was about a month ago, so just kind of as a 4 weeks out, 8 weeks out for Masters Nationals, kind of a test run. But he also wanted his college-age daughter to see what her dad's doing in his spare time. And then after the meet, he sent me a little email saying, great time, thanks. And my daughter doesn't think I've lost my mind, and that what I'm doing actual sport and actual competition, which I thought was pretty cool. So that's part of at the Masters level, right? It's everybody there is old enough to have a family and different age type kids, and then you can bring in your teenage kids or a 10-year-old daughter or a husband and a wife, and it becomes a little bit more, kind of like a family outing in some ways.
Yeah.
It's just for all accounts, it's a good time. The meets are, there's usually a lot of people. They tend to have big meets, and they're getting bigger. And I think it's a good sense of competition, and kind of like a friendly competition. I mean, people are trying to win, and they're going to do what it takes to win. But at the end of the day, I think everybody's there because they enjoy it, which is probably the most important thing.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Inevitably, at most local competitions, a good chunk, if not even the majority, of the competitors are either master's age or not too far off from master's age. Like I kind of think there's like a subclass called like a pre-masters class. Like if you don't start weightlifting until you're maybe in your late 20s or 30, then you won't be truly competitive until you become a master's lifter. But you can be quite competitive as a master's lifter, actually, the 35 to 39. But that's, a weightlifter's got a 5 to 10 year period before they're going to be hitting that genetic potential that they have.
Sure.
And so by the time you do that, you'll be a master's lifter. And a lot of people at a local meet are in this group. And obviously there's some difference in mindset of someone who is a master's lifter than someone who's 18, 19, 20 years old and really wants to be on a world team someday.
Sure.
Right? Like the difference in mindset is not, I wouldn't say it's horribly dramatic, but there is a slight difference in that the masters lifters have other things in their life that have to take priority over their lifting. Even though the lifting's a priority in their life, and they make it a priority. And I think it's quite impressive, the level of dedication a lot of masters lifters have. I mean, they're working out sometimes daily, working very hard in the gym in a way that the average 20-year-old just doesn't, in this country. That's very impressive. But of course, push comes to shove. I mean, they have a family, they have a job, they've got things going on in their life that have to take priority, and that they have a sense of perspective there, which I think is really nice. I like that my gym has a very broad age group in it. It means that the atmosphere has I would say, more mature atmosphere than say like a high school weight room does. And that means that the younger lifters, they're sort of forced to psychologically bring themselves up to the level of the atmosphere in the room. They have to be more adult in their way of thinking about things, realizing that this one lift is not life or death. You're going to live to snatch another day. That's a fact.
You have many snatches left in you.
Yes, you do. Yeah, and that's such an important thing in a sport that takes so long to get good at. It's not like there are some sports where you can be quite good in a year.
Yep.
That's not really true of weightlifting. You can be better than people who don't do it in a year, but you're really, really at the beginning in your first couple of years. You know, I mean, even if you're fast, like Pat
Yeah.
Mendez, you know, it was 3 years before he won nationals.
Yeah.
You know, it took him 3 years. It wasn't like he was able to do it in 1 year. And that's fast. You know, we would consider that fast. Sarah Robles, same thing. It's like 3 years since she won nationals.
You know, maybe it's just a different not difference of opinion, but difference of wording, really, where it takes a while to be excellent at weightlifting. But I think because it's an individual sport, I think you can see progress much faster. So yeah, it may take 2 or 3 years to really, to start putting up competitive weights or winning your weight class at nationals. But it's nice because you can see progress very quickly. So at the
That's
Masters
a good
level,
point. Yeah.
if you're playing, I mean, you can play, adult league baseball, adult league. It's not as, there are not as many teams and leagues, but you can play adult league basketball, and you're only as competitive as your team allows you to be. But
Right.
in weightlifting, if you want to take a very slow path and maybe do one meet in the next 4 years, or if you want to compete multiple times per year, you can do that in weightlifting, and you'll see progress at each one of those meets. So it's kind of a trade-off in that, yeah, it takes a little while to be real successful, but at the same time, you see progress constantly. I think that's what attracts a lot of masters to it, and it's the idea again that if you go to a marathon, we had a half marathon here in DFW this past weekend called the Rock and Roll Half Marathon, big, like 11,000 people. If you're doing very well if you finish in the top 10%, but you finish number 1100, hey, you're top 10%, but you're still number 1100, right?
Right.
But you go to a weightlifting meet, even with 30 people, and if you're in the top 10%, you're awesome. You're top 3, you're top half, you're doing great.
Yeah.
I think it's just a difference of magnitude, really.
Sure. Yeah. I think there's 2 good points there. One is the ease of calculating progress.
Yeah.
I think that is really appealing. It's certainly one of the things that appealed to me.
Kilos, very easy.
Yeah, it's really simple.
Yeah, kilogram at a time.
Like it's so obvious, right? Like, did you or did you not add kilos to the bar?
Yep.
Done. And it makes it even easier, actually, that, unlike, say, like a bodybuilder, bodybuilders still try to, a lot of their progress they're trying to base on what they look like. But on a day-to-day basis, really, they're still similar in that they're trying to gauge progress in the gym. Like, am I bench pressing more, or am I doing my barbell rows with more weight? But they're doing it with, like, higher reps.
Mm-hmm.
CrossFit got the same thing. They got all these different combinations of workouts and different repetition schemes and all that kind of stuff for timing it. And that means that trying to figure out if you've made progress or not over the course of a month can be really hard in some of these different kinds of sports. Because, if you're like an 8-rep max on 3 different exercises and you got to time yourself in 20 minutes or something, like, that's really complicated. And you've got like maybe 50 of these different types of workouts or something. It's very, very different than weightlifting, where you have a 1-rep max.
Yeah.
Just one. So it's really obvious. There's no timed anything. That's the only factor. The only factor is, did it or did it not get over your head in a competition legal manner?
Yeah.
And that is really nice for people who like to gauge progress. Which, of course, I think anybody who's going to get into a sport is going to be that way, right? They're going to like to gauge their progress and know that they made gains. And like you said, even though you have a long path to be excellent, and by excellent we really just mean maximizing your own potential.
Sure.
Which is always impressive in anything you could do with your life. If you maximize your own potential, that's going to take a long time. It's going to take a lot of work. But you can see a lot of progress over the short term. And in some sense, actually, you'll see more progress in the short term than you will later. The first year or two, you're going to have some pretty fast progress. The amount of kilos that get added to the bar in the first 3 to 6 months for most lifters, if they're being coached well, is substantial. It's mind-boggling to the people who are doing it, because they've never seen that kind of progress before. And that's coming from a lot of areas. We've talked before about how part of it is just technical. Now you're maximizing your strength. And so you didn't have to get stronger, but now you've added a bunch of weight to the snatch and the clean and jerk. And the other is, of course, is strength. You can increase your squats and see pretty. I mean, I feel like until you're getting near your genetic potential, you should be seeing increases on the squats every month. Maybe not a lot. It was like a kilo, at the higher end. But in the early days, it's going to be a lot. It's going to be kind of amazing. Wow, I gained like 50 pounds on my squat in 8 to 12 weeks. That's amazing,
Yeah.
And in the first 3 months, that's actually not crazy. That happens.
Yeah, 20. I mean, if you had 20 kilos first, call it the first 4 months. You should. Yeah, that's pretty conservative, really.
5K, a month in the first couple of months of training. That's
very normal.
I would say that's pretty baseline. You should be able to do that.
Once you get a couple years in, you're fighting tooth or nail for those 5 kilo improvements.
Right. Like I was shocked myself by the fact that I mentioned a while back. So Dave, the lifter who's going to Masters Nationals, he recently put 20 kilos on his back squat in 8 weeks.
That's real good.
It's ridiculous. He is not a beginner. He's been squatting since he was a 20-year-old. He did take time off, and so, he's coming back at it. He was a sprint cyclist when he was young, took some time off in his 30s, decided to do weightlifting now. And he has been lifting with us, though, for, almost 2 years now. I mean, he's far from a beginner. And his squats were pretty decent, for a guy he's in his 40s. But they weren't great, and they weren't up to the level that I thought they should be. I think he has a lot of potential that's being untapped. But, we had him get on this squat program, which is mostly just a ridiculous amount of volume. I mean, like we said before, that sometimes the trick to squatting big numbers is really not magical. It's just squat a lot and squat really hard.
Yeah.
And that's basically what we did. I've outlined it before on my blog somewhere. I talked about the specific details and stuff, and maybe I can find that link and put it in the show notes. But that's sort of, sometimes I get a little wary of that, because it obscures the reality that it's not the numbers and the sets and reps per se. Those things are a little more individual sometimes. Like, that's the stuff that seems to be working with my group right now.
Sure.
But
consistency and effort are kind of universal.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and he just said, okay, I'm going to hunker down for a couple months, and I'm going to make squats my priority. Squatted first in every workout, and got a little crazy about it. And I mean, literally, it's a little. I mean, I'm going to say it's a little crazy. I mean, he would squat for like 2 hours a day.
Wow.
It took him 2 hours to get through this workout, Plus, he's in his 40s. We joke that it takes him an hour to warm up.
Yeah.
That's not really a joke. It actually does take him about an hour to warm up. So now anytime someone's taking a long time, we say they're doing the Dave warm up.
Yeah.
And so, that's 3 hours in the gym at night. That's ridiculous, right? But it worked. And he gained 20K on his back squat. So it's going to take a little while for that to translate to his Olympic lifts, obviously. He's going to have to go through a phase of now maximizing that strength and all of that. But what's cool is that here's another case where progress is easy to gauge. He had 1 rep max he was trying to increase. It may be a little while that he got that big of an increase in such a short time for someone who's not a beginner and is a master's lifter, and all of that. But it's not that wild considering that he had some room to improve, and he just put in a ridiculous amount of work, more work than most people are willing to do. So the numbers, I think, they're really not magical. It's not that wild. It's just they're connected pretty clearly to what the work was. But what is great is just the fact that this kind of just incremental improvement is virtually guaranteed if you're consistent.
Yep.
If you're consistent over the long haul, with this sport, you will be able to see written numbers on paper that you can plot into a graph if you're so inclined, improvements over and over and over and over again for years and years on end, and you will be able to look back and go, oh my gosh, I cannot believe how much stronger I am now.
It may not be a straight line, right? There may be, ideally it would go, it may kind of... But you go long enough
Jagged.
and consistent enough, you'll have some ups and downs, but you'll be better than you were last year if you do it right.
Right, right. I don't know if I've said this here, but one of the analogies I like is like a sine wave that's been tilted upwards.
Yep, that's it.
And it may be a jagged one, so maybe it's got some weird variables in there. But the idea being that you have ups and downs, but someday your downs will be greater than your ups. And, you know, that's just the way it goes. You slowly go up and you slowly go down, but the whole curve itself is tilted upward, so you're constantly in this upward trajectory. And the only real thing that's required is consistent hard work. I guess that's two things. Consistency and hard work. You can be consistent and not work very hard, and then you won't get any progress at all.
Work so hard, damn month, right?
Or you can work hard and be totally inconsistent. You know, work hard for 3 months and then take 9 months off every year. You won't get anywhere. But if you can do both, which, you know, like we said before, I would rather see a lifter come in just 2 days a week. That's it. No more than 2 days a week. Work real hard and be consistent about that all year. And whoo, they'll make great progress. Than somebody who's like, yeah, I'm going to be there 5 days a week. And they are there 5 days a week for a month.
8 weeks.
Yeah, exactly. And then it's just sporadic after that. Like that's worthless. That doesn't do you any good. So that's pretty interesting. I love that about the sport. It's definitely one of the biggest draws for me is that I can just look down on paper and go, oh my gosh, I can't believe how big these numbers are relative to what I used to do.
Yeah.
Numbers that there's some part of your brain when you're first starting you don't think you'll ever hit.
Well, not even numbers sometimes. Sometimes it's just a combination of plates on the bar. Like, you know.
The color scheme?
Yeah, like 80 kilos on a snatch. You know, you have a 20 and a 10, and that just looks.
Yeah.
Like now you have two bumpers on a bar. Like you're doing something right. And a lot of people think that way. Like, you know, I've always wanted to clean 100 kilos. Like, oh, why? 220 pounds? Nah, it's a red and a yellow. That just looks like, or 120.
Yeah.
I want to clean two. I want to
or
clean
two blues or whatever you got.
Yeah, exactly. That's just silly. It sounds silly, but I think if that's what's lighting your fire, then stick to it and run with it. You know.
Yeah, we have a masters lifter, Cindy, who is one of those examples of the consistency where. She's not the most naturally gifted on the technique side. She's definitely she struggles on it at a way that's pretty hard struggle. She came in with a lot of strength, though. She was a competitive bodybuilder, actually, for a while. And she had built up a fair amount of just brute strength. So she squats pretty substantial numbers for a person who's only like 58 kilos. But putting that into the bar was nearly impossible. And she had she actually wasn't even going to allow herself to buy Olympic lifting shoes until she snatched 45 kilos.
Yeah.
Because that was the women's bar plus the yellows. Yeah. And she just thought that looked cool, and she had to do it. And so she did, and when she did, she bought her Olympic lifting shoes. Now her new thing is, I'm not going to buy a singlet until I clean it. I can't remember what the number was, but it was actually, it wasn't a number, it was a color combination.
You gotta find a little motivator sometimes, and as silly as that may sound to some people, that's motivation. That's day in, day out motivation.
Yeah, and if you're gonna work this hard at something, it's nice to give yourself those little motivators.
Sure.
And even if it's just something, I'm gonna, go take myself out to sushi or something when I snatch this weight, whatever it is. Then that could be pretty huge. It is funny, like, we now have a few more of the nicer plates in our gym, but for most of the time in my club, we have had very thick plates. The cheaper bumper plates. Yeah, composite giant monsters. And that has meant that in the gym, the same weight will look significantly larger, heavier than the same weight at a contest. And that's been actually kind of nice because you go into a competition, you're like, 90 kilos does not look like a very heavy snatch out there in a contest versus what it looks like in the gym.
Looks like you have two tires on the end of the bar.
Right. You look like you're doing a strongman event,
Yeah.
Made the Flintstone plates.
Yeah.
Actually, Rogue has these bumpers, some of their kilo bumpers, that are not their high-end ones, but they're lower-end ones,
Mm-hmm.
that they do look like they're made of stone. They're composite of some other things, and they have like this funny, like...
Sure. I've seen that, yeah.
Yeah, and they really do look like Flintstone plates.
Yeah.
And, if you have the right attitude, that might make you lift more.
Might have an outside platform, might make you lift a ton more.
Exactly. Yeah, that's good.
Something else that's kind of unique to the Masters competitors, not weightlifting, but they have Masters track and field competitions as well. And I met a guy a few weeks ago who is, he's very competitive in Masters track and field, and he competed in the Masters World Championships a few years ago.
Cool.
In the 100-meter dash. And when he turned 50, he said his father was on the phone with him, kind of giving him a hard time about, how does it feel to finally be 50, He's like, I feel fantastic. I'm going to be the fastest 50-year-old in the country for the next few months. Because in Masters, it's based on little, age groupings. So, like 35 to 39, 40 to 49, or 45 to 49. So when you move into a new age category, if you're very good in you're going to be the best in that new age category most of the time. So
yeah.
He was excited. He was looking forward to his 50th birthday so he could move up to the next age category and kick those guys in the rear for a little while. And that doesn't happen all the time, right? People are afraid of birthdays. Masters competitors looking forward to it.
Right, I think it starts at like the 30th birthday and it just gets worse.
Yeah.
I think that's true. I think outside of Masters competition, aging is horrible. But in Masters competition, I can totally relate to that because I'm about to turn 35 in
It'll be your first Masters
in a year. Yeah, I'll be Masters for the first time. And so I've had all along like these goals for the 35 to 39 age group. Like I want to, win Masters Nationals. I want to go to Masters Worlds as a 35, 39 guy. I would like to see if I can, before I'm 39, break the Masters snatch record.
Yep.
It's a big one. For me, it would be a big one. It's like 130, I want to say, or 125. And if I did that, being that I'm a split snatcher, that would be one of the biggest split snatches by Sinclair in this country in a long time. That'd be pretty cool. So little goals like that are kind of interesting, but I could totally relate. Like I have no fear of turning 35.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh yeah, I'm about to go into an area where I can actually be competitive, which I have not yet been. My lifts are not, not tiny anymore. And they're not huge by any means, but they're sub national level lifts, right?
But in Masters competitions, they're national level lifts.
They're national level lifts, yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I'll be in the top 3 easy, top 3, top 5, during that period of time. And by the time I'm pretty convinced, by the time I'm approaching 40 and the high end of the 35, 39, that I will definitely be one of the better lifters in the country in my age group. It's just the same thing. It's just consistency and hard work, and the gains are coming slower for me now, but that's a long time. That's 5 years of work and improvement that I can keep putting in. And
those 5 years. Those 5 years are going to happen no matter what.
Right.
Might as well train during them, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I always have this feeling like you should keep your goals really high because the worst thing that can happen is that you get partway there.
Yeah.
Like let's say you only get halfway to a really high goal. That's still really high. That's a great thing. I mean, even just doing what I'm doing now, snatching, 20K over body weight, that's something that still kind of blows my mind a little bit because there's you start out and just the idea of snatching body weight is so hard.
Yeah,
like I can't imagine doing that. And I had a slower trajectory than most of my lifters do. It took me a heck of a lot longer to get to be able to do this. And yet I still got to a point where I was able to do something that is rare, compared to a bunch of 20-year-olds in my weight class. I'm not doing much at all. But compared to, most people who lift weights, that's a lot. And that's impressive. And I think that's something that every adult lifter can really look forward to, is that without a doubt, even after just about a year, you will be doing some stuff that is truly impressive compared to what almost anyone else in the country is doing. There's very few people who've actually done what you just did.
Yeah, I agree.
That is truly impressive, and that's only your first year.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool stuff. And, by the way, if you're listening to this, Masters national competitions don't have qualifiers, which means you can decide to just go, and I think you should. I think your goal should be, in my first year of training, I wanted to go to either the, National Masters or the American Masters competition, and just make that a thing, if you can swing it financially. I mean, I know like the flight and the hotel and all that can be a pain, but if you can maybe plan for it for a year, that's a great first goal, is to just go. Meet some people. It's a great motivator. And there's no, unlike, the younger guys and girls who have to qualify first to go to a national competition, and that keeps them out sometimes for years on end. Sure. You don't have that. You can actually go first year and compete and have that be one of those awesome motivators for you. Come back, and, my lifters who have gone to Masters and come back have certainly been super motivated after that. Yeah. It's a great thing to do just for the fun of it all and to keep yourself going.
Maybe just to kind of wrap up here, we can maybe, like, if it is your first, if this is your first meet or first national level competition, do you have any, like key pieces of advice you'd like to pass along? So maybe something you told Dave, or something you would tell another competitor who this is their first national Masters competition.
Sure, yeah. I mean, if you're going in, I'm going to assume if you're going to, if it's your first competition at all, or if it's, maybe your first national competition. Maybe you've done a few local ones, but it's definitely you've taken another step now.
Yep.
I think my first advice is be conservative.
Yep.
With your opener. I think you're going to want to almost show off a little bit, or stay with the pack. Like maybe like there's a couple people coming into your weight class, and they're kind of lifting some bigger weights, and you want to be up in that with them. I think that's a mistake. This is I think what's true with most individual sports is that you're really competing with yourself.
Yep.
And the better you get at that, the more likely it is over the long haul you'll beat others.
Sure.
But you really can't do anything to change what they're doing, so you really can only focus on yourself. And if you bomb out, you're not on the board at all. So you really need to just come in with a pretty conservative snatch and clean and jerk, and then you can always go up from there. I think do what you're comfortable with, what you can make, even if you have a cold. And then you're pretty good. I think sometimes as you go a little more advanced, maybe you can take those risks, and that could be good, could be bad, whatever. That's up to you as you move forward. But your first couple of contests, I really like the idea of you making sure you get those lifts in. How about you? Is there anything to add to that?
I think your advice is right on. I would say fight the urge to do more. I think and this maybe goes for everybody, but sometimes with the first national competition, right, you have this urge that you have to do more to be ready to compete, like in the days leading up to the competition.
Oh, you mean in the couple weeks leading in?
Well, like even like 3 days leading in, or 5 days leading into the competition. Everybody has this urge of, I need to start doing more because the meet's a week away. And I heard a piece of advice one time that said, the last week before a meet, you can't make yourself any stronger, but you can sure find things to do to make yourself a lot weaker. Right?
That's good advice. Yeah.
Just that week before the competition, fight the urge to do more. And then I would also say, it's kind of late now, but hopefully all your travel has been taken care of. The last thing you want to have to deal with is stress related to travel. Like, have a clear idea of how you're getting there, where you're sleeping, how you're getting from the airport to the meet hotel. Take care of all that stuff a week in advance. So the week leading up to the meet, you can just do 2 or 3, kind of not easy workouts, but planned workouts. That's all you should be doing. That is not the time to start experimenting with new start position.
Right.
People like to do that too. They like to start, well, the meet's getting close. If the meet's in a week, I better fix my start. Well, should have fixed it 8 weeks ago.
Too late. Yeah, go with what you got.
You're already there, so just run with what you got, and like you said, be conservative.
Yeah.
And I think that's a great approach for your first national competition.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great. So we'll be back next week, and I'll tell you how my lifter did, and we'll also maybe have some updates on some of the bigger lifts at Masters.
Yeah, that'd be good.
It'd be pretty cool. Well, great talking to you, man.
Yeah, as always,
Yeah,
weightliftingacademy.com, facebook.com/weightlifting academy. We had a few question and answer this week on the Facebook page, so hopefully that picks up, and maybe if it's some stuff we can maybe pull off the Facebook page and talk about it next week if it's a good topic for discussion.
Absolutely, yeah,
we're open.
Good
deal.
All right. Well, we'll see you next week, brother.